Welcome to Jersey Justice, a civil law podcast that shares practical tips and stories about personal and workplace injuries. Join two of the brightest New Jersey injury attorneys, Gerald Clark and Mark Morris of Clark Law Firm, as they take you behind the scenes of justice and civil law. But first, a quick disclaimer. The information shared on this podcast is for general information purposes only. Nothing on this site should be taken as legal advice for any individual case or situation. This information is not intended to create and does not constitute an attorney-client relationship. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Jersey Justice. Today, we are here with Jerry and we're here with Lazaro Berenguer. We're going to be talking about why did he decide to become a personal injury lawyer? Because we always like to know the story and the why behind why people get up and they do what they do every day. So welcome to the show.
So hi, Dimple. My name is Lazaro Berenguer. I'm one of a number of personal injury attorneys here at the Clark Law Firm. As you very well may know, we specialize in personal injury cases and in all kinds of accident cases.
Wonderful. And now, I do have to ask you the question of the day, which is, when was it that you decided to become a lawyer? And then, tell us a little bit of that backstory of that why. And also, how did you pick the type of practice area that you were going to go into?
Well, that's a funny story. I went into college thinking that wanting to go to medical school. I remember Biology 101, and that final exam was about 30, 40 pages thick. And I said, no, this is it. So then I just started taking classes in the pre-law area, classes that ended up interesting me. And eventually I decided, yes, this is something that I want to pursue. Very passionate about these classes. I was doing very well in them. So that's how I decided to go into law school.
I'm going to dig a little deeper. So you wanted to be a doctor. Am I hearing that right? You wanted to be a doctor, but instead you ended up becoming a lawyer. I feel like there's some in-between story that we're missing there. So how did you decide? How did that switch happen?
It wasn't too abrupt. It was just, I decided just to take some additional classes and I ended up liking them. I ended up doing very well in them. And so in time, I decided, well, let me start looking into law school, into what it's about, what it's like. And that's how my interest grew, especially because I was doing very well in them. I enjoyed it. I had a number of internships as well that actually showed me what it is to be a lawyer in different realms and different areas.
Tell us about your family background. I mean, when people say to me, oh, you're a lawyer and you're youngest of 13 kids, there must be a lot of lawyers in your family. And I'm like, nope, I'm the only one. What's your backstory, your family story in terms of that? Was there encouragement from the family and, that kind of thing? And how did that all wash?
Definitely. I'm the only attorney in my family. It's my sister and I. And it's funny because I wasn't one who initially liked to read a lot. But, when you go to law school, when you obviously go to undergrad, you don't have a choice and you build a liking to it. My dad, he's from Cuba. He fled the Cuban dictatorship. My mom is from the Dominican Republic. They met here in this country. And then it just interested in me, especially the justice aspect behind it. It was just very interesting to me. And that's what I initially found.
Thank you for sharing that with us. And I think for you, it happened organically. And I love that it just, you kind of fell into it. You took some classes. You really liked it. It's also quite interesting. You're the only attorney in the family. Sometimes, there's a family of doctors and everyone's a doctor. There's a family of lawyers and everyone's a lawyer. So I love that. Tell us a little bit more about yourself as a person, your background. Is there anything you did when you were in school or growing up that you wanted to share with us? Or maybe I think Jerry might want to dive into that.
Sure. I can definitely go into that a little bit. So right after my undergrad work at Rutgers in New Brunswick, I knew I wanted to go to law school, but I decided to take a little bit of a break from the school. So I decided to join the Army. I was in the Army. I was in the military. I was with a very popular division, 101st Airborne Division Air Assault, based out of Fort Campbell, Kentucky. While there, we deployed to Iraq, to Tikrit, Iraq. And my passion for the law grew while I was there, especially based on what was going on in the government at the time in Iraq. But the most important thing to me has been my faith in God. That has been the most important thing to me. My faith in the Lord started when I was in Iraq. I was going through a very, very dark time, very depressed, even suicidal. And then I had an encounter with God. And then that's when my relationship with the Lord sparked. And even after that is when I really started to pursue God, and my desire to be an attorney even grew, because that's when I started realizing more and more about what really is the legal field and what we do to help others.
Laz, I gotta ask you about that. So last summer I did a Navy SEAL swim. It's organized by Bill Brown, who's an attorney at McCarter and English, and he was a Navy SEAL. And it's like a 3-mile swim across the Hudson River. He likes to say the river is dangerous because of the currents. I like to say it's dangerous because it's incredibly dirty and nasty to swim in that. And it's a 3-mile swim, and it's a 2-mile run, and then it's like 100 pull-ups and 300 push-ups. And, I'm kind of like a competitive person. So I'm like, I'm wondering how, who wins this thing? And and I was talking to Bill, he's like, because I did a couple practice swims with him last summer across the river, 3 miles from Jersey City to Lower Manhattan. And I'm like, all right, who wins? He's like, well, no one wins. I'm like, well, what's this all about? And he's like, really? It's about getting veterans together. Bill's big thing is if veterans don't look out for each other, no one's going to. So it's a way to get them together. And it is the reason we do, I forget exactly what it is, but we do 22, I think it's 22 push-ups at each station or something, or 22 pull-ups at each station. And that's to honor the 22 veterans that take their lives every day on average. And so the reason they get the veterans together is to get guys together so they're staying in touch if they're going through difficult times. The person who gave the prayer before the event last summer, the swim on the Hudson started, was Jim Purdy, I believe, a Navy SEAL who went through some tough times. So can you talk about that? Like, for people that did not serve, such as myself, what is it that leads to that kind of thing? Is it the combat? Like, what is it? And what can you recommend to others that might have gone through that? Because you're doing awesome. You're very successful. You just had an awesome win in Essex County Court. So having come from so far from those dark times, what can you offer to others that might be going through that kind of thing? And, how did you get through it?
What can be offered to others is, it's one thing, honestly. It's hope. When you are in a place of combat, in a place of warfare, as humans, I don't think we're built for that. You get all this training, but humanly speaking, there's only so much that you can handle. So you come to a place of sadness. I mean, you're away from your family, away from home, constant living in fear. And the only thing that helped me was realizing that there is hope. In the Bible, in the book of Hebrews, describes that our hope in the times of trials and tribulations, our hope, our anchor in the storm is Jesus Christ. And I started to realize that not as I progressed and learned more about this hope. And that's what helps. That's the only thing that really helps. That's the only thing that really heals and restores. I remember when I came back from Iraq, I was in a parking lot. Think of like a mall parking lot. And I was with my sister at the time, and I said to her, "What?" And there were cars all around. There's a mall. And I said to her, "This place is very quiet." And she looked at me. She didn't understand, but what she didn't understand was the life that I had been living for about a year, in which there were rocket attacks. We had a soldier that got killed in a rocket attack over there. And so it's something that's only understood, I think, by someone who's been there, but also it's understood by God himself, right? Because he's ever present and he fills us with hope in those difficult times and seasons in our lives, whether it's at war or whether it's here. when things are not so great sometimes.
So as a plaintiff's lawyer, we talk a lot on this podcast about fighting the insurance companies and how difficult it is and the challenges and how they always try to drown us in paper to get away from paying. How was your experience like kind of going through just such a tough time like that? And the things you talked about, how does that incorporate into practicing law each day and keeping going and fighting for people? Like, how do you incorporate those concepts about hope and your faith and the challenges that you went through fighting for the country? And, I've thanked you. I remember when I first met you, I thanked you for your service. And I hope it doesn't sound trite, but I got to thank you again publicly like this. But if you can talk about that.
Definitely. As personal injury attorneys, as plaintiffs' personal injury attorneys, we're fighting in essence for the little guy. We're fighting for people who don't have a voice. The Bible in Proverbs 31 says, speak up for those who don't have a voice. And that's an opportunity that we get to do, to fight these big corporations. And many a times our clients are indigent. Our clients don't even speak the language many a times. And we have the honor, we have the privilege. Being an advocate for someone is a high calling. It is a calling from God. And so we get the opportunity to be able to be a blessing in someone's life. I remember we had this case, Jerry and I, we took it to trial. We had a very, very, very large verdict, Washington Munoz. And I remember when I was at his office, I think on a weekend, just handing him his checks. And he was in tears. He was so happy. He was so overjoyed, not just because we won a verdict for him, because we can lose it such as easily as well, but he was overjoyed because we fought for him. We were his voice. So that's something that's very important that I carry on a daily basis when we see our clients. We have the opportunity to be someone's voice.
I remember that trial when you helped arrange to get Washington Munoz, and it's all public information, to get, I think it was his daughter, to testify from remote. And I remember when she did and talked about her dad and the changes in her dad since he fell. I remember there was at least one juror was in tears as well as I remember. How about your Spanish speaking skills? You want to talk about that a little bit? How that's helpful to you as a lawyer and an advocate, and understanding maybe a lot of the cultures that we come across, representing a lot of immigrant workers and people that we give the voice to.
Absolutely. So Spanish was actually my first language. I was born and raised in this country, but at home we only spoke Spanish. So that alone, that's been a huge blessing, because we have many clients who speak Spanish and other very similar languages like Portuguese. And, they're able to find someone, an attorney. We have many foreign speaking staff who speak Portuguese, Spanish, and they're able to find someone who is able to speak their language and understand them, and not just understand what they're saying, but understand the culture, what's behind that. So when they're able to find that, I think many a times they're able to trust, they're able to open up in a way that, is not always possible. So I think that they feel comfortable. So I think that having that Spanish language skill is definitely very helpful in being the voice for others.
I have to say, I love that, because, there's a whole population out there, right, that they are, working in America, and they may not know the English language that well. They might not know how to communicate, right? So I think it's so important that you can represent them and be a voice for them, because they don't know how to do that for themselves. And even in cases, it's hard to defend yourself. That's why there's lawyers. So thank you for what you do every day. And Jerry, what else can you, talk about in terms of, the importance of being a voice for other people when they don't have their own voice?
Well, I don't know. It would be kind of anticlimactic if I were start to talk about that, given the incredibly powerful story and really testimony that Lazaro, we call Laz a lot, just gave. But I would like him to talk a little bit about the trial he just had and about the result. and how it all went down. And if you could tell us about that, Laz, what the insurance company was offering to settle before, and what the court arbitrator thought the case was worth, and what happened there.
Yeah, definitely. So recently, last week, just had a trial, and this was a car crash. Our client was traveling, and out of nowhere, a defendant on Route 22, she shot across 2 lanes of traffic trying to hit an exit on the left lane, and she ran right in front of our client. He had no time, and he just crashed into her. And he was a young guy. At the time, he was in his 30s. But this drastically changed his life. This one incident drastically changed his life. He had low back pain, and he was a husband and a father of 2 young sons, a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old at the time of the crash. Because of his lower back injury, he had to miss out on a good amount of their life, a good amount of their upbringing. He used to bathe his little sons, and on the witness stand, I remember his wife testified, and she said that he was a very active father. As soon as he came home from work, he was taking care of his sons, running, jumping around with them, giving them baths. And after that crash, he wasn't the same. He wasn't the same father. He wasn't the same husband. In fact, he wasn't able to even bathe his own sons because he wasn't able to bend down because of his lower back injury. So it was at first the arbitrator found the case to be worth in the area of $35,000. That's what he gauged it at. Right before trial, defendants offered about $50,000. And that wasn't even anywhere close to help in any way the client. So we went ahead and we fought for him. We were his voice. We fought for him. We took it all the way to trial, to verdict, and we had a good verdict. And I think what helped was some of the witnesses, right? We wanted to present a case that showed how this crash impacted and changed his life. His wife took the witness stand. His work supervisor took the stand as well, remotely through Zoom. And she was I think they were able to present in a very solid way, which portrayed how this crash had changed his life.
So, Laz, we did some podcasts. We did one recently about experts, and we were talking about the defense medical expert. And we don't name any names or anything, but what did the experts say? What did the expert hired by the insurance company say about your client, and how did you deal with that to win the trial? And by the way, what was the total recovery? Well, the total verdict when you add everything up was about $90,000 plus, right?
Yes.
Yeah, cool. So, how'd you deal with what did the defense experts say, and how'd you deal with it?
So the defense expert was saying that our young 33, 34-year-old client at the time of the crash wasn't injured. There was nothing wrong with his back. And in essence, he was just faking and exaggerating. So we were able to cross-examine him, not just on the medical, which I believe strongly showed that he was wrong, but we were able to cross-examine him. And as far as his history, right? That he had a history of earning millions of dollars representing these insurance companies. And I think the jury got it. I think they understood that this guy was just, in it for the money, right? And I think what really helped was what we call non-party fact witnesses, which is those other people that know the life of the injured victim, right? They were able to tell a story. And I think the jury was able to understand that he wasn't faking, he wasn't exaggerating. And when they looked at all the medical records, when they looked at all of that and really heard the story and saw the evidence, I think they were able to come to the right conclusion, which was he was actually injured.
Awesome.
Wow. Thank you so much. And thank you both for being here today. And we will see everyone on the next episode.
Thanks, Dimple.
Thank you.
And there you have it, folks. Another episode of Jersey Justice Podcast. If you're loving what you're hearing, it's time to hit that subscribe button on Apple, YouTube, and Spotify podcasts. And don't forget to leave us a review online. Share this podcast with your friends and become their legal hero. Dive into more episodes at jerseyjusticepodcast.com or clarklawnj.com and check out our show notes for more information. If you're navigating legal issues and need a guiding light, we're just a phone call away. Call us at 1-877-841-8855. Again, 1-877-841-8855. Until next time, Jersey Justice Warriors, stay empowered and informed.